In The Prince of Darkness, there is a dream segment that I found really unsettling and effective in showing cosmic horror. What happens is everyone who falls asleep in a certain church has the same dream. But this dream is not really a dream, it's a transmission from the future, which was only possible to sync to these humans through their unconscious. It's a fantastic way to show us just how limited our understanding of the world is. Cosmic horror isn't just about big monsters. It's about the unsettling realization that we are insignificant in the grand scheme of the universe and its inner workings. The genre explores the fear of the unknown and the unknowable. The true horror isn't in the creatures themselves, but the implications of their existence. Forces or entities that operate on rules so alien that they break our understanding of reality. Portraying this on film is a delicate balance. Show too much and you risk breaking the mystery. Show too little and it falls flat. But when it's done right, the effect is unforgettable, and one of my favorites in movies. So as mentioned earlier, the first on our list today is The Prince of Darkness. This movie might be John Carpenter's most intriguing and underappreciated efforts in the realm of cosmic horror, which he's no stranger to. I mentioned him in my previous video, and he will have another entry in this one too. On the surface, this is a story about a group of scientists and students teaming up with a priest to investigate a mysterious artifact in the basement of an old church. But, like all great cosmic horror, the real terror lies in what the artifact represents, the unraveling of everything we think we know about science, religion, and reality. The source of madness in this movie is a strange canister containing a swirling green liquid. It's an ancient, sentient force, seemingly the physical embodiment of Satan, or something similar. The group discovers cryptic texts suggesting that this force predates humanity and operates on a scale far larger and beyond anything we know. What starts as an academic study quickly turns into a nightmare as the liquid begins to influence and possess those nearby, spreading chaos and fear. What I find especially effective is how the evil force treats people as nothing more than tools for its purposes. In one scene, there is a girl typing on a computer, but she's overtaken by the entity. Her existence is reduced to a mere transmitter, her hands moving mechanically to deliver its cryptic messages. Anyone corrupted by the force becomes its agent, stripped of autonomy, existing solely to carry out its will, whether by awaiting orders or executing them without hesitation. And the dream sequence I mentioned in the beginning is what stuck with me the most from this movie. It almost reminds me of those modern-day analog horror videos. The message was sent by scientists from the future in order to warn the protagonist about the threat. And the message itself is changed by the end of the movie, which could mean that the threat was averted, but we can never know for sure. The end involves mirrors as gateways to another dimension, which seems to be a pitch black liquid. There is a short scene of presumably Satan's hand peeking through the mirror into our world, but he is luckily stopped in his efforts. However, it's not just about stopping the entity, it's about confronting the fragility of reality and the terrifying possibility that what lies beyond might be worse than anything we can imagine. And yet another entry from John Carpenter is The Thing, likely his most well-known movie on this topic. This movie features a group of researchers in Antarctica, facing an entity that doesn't just threaten their lives, it dissolves the very concept of trust, identity, and reality itself. And the thing is not a singular thing. It doesn't have one form because it exists to replicate and consume, which makes it a perfect reflection of cosmic horror. A creature that follows rules we can't understand, that reduces humanity to just another step in its cycle of existence. Where it came from or how it works is only hinted at by the discovery of a huge spaceship buried in the ice. The Antarctic setting is beautiful for the story and it amplifies everything. Isolation, cold, and the unbroken expanse of white snow create a stage where the characters are utterly alone, and the environment itself feels hostile. No one is coming to help them, and even if they stop the thing, who would ever know? This makes even the best case scenario not look that great. In my last cosmic horror video, I also mentioned Lovecraft's At the Mountains of Madness, which happens to be my favorite of his stories. If you're familiar with it, you will immediately notice the parallels with this movie. Both feature researchers stranded in the icy isolation of Antarctica, uncovering something they were never meant to find. And in both, the real horror isn't just the beings they encounter, it's what those beings represent. The fragility of human understanding in the face of something truly alien. The ending is what solidifies this as cosmic horror. The last two survivors sit there, freezing in the dark, neither trusting the other. There's no triumphant escape, no resolution, just exhaustion and uncertainty. Did they stop the thing? Did they fail? The film doesn't tell you because it doesn't need to. This genre is about unanswered questions, about the realization that some truths will remain out of reach. And the ambiguity isn't frustrating, it's what makes the story linger with you. I first watched this movie with a friend in our college dorm 3 years ago, and I distinctly remember us both not liking it very much. We had absolutely no clue what was going on, and we were busy looking for the true meaning and whatnot. The only part we liked was the opening sequence and the snowy mountains and the mysterious skeleton monster. I have since come to find out that this movie is something of a cult classic in the realm of cosmic horror, so of course I decided to explore it further. At first glance, The Empty Man seems like a typical urban legend horror movie. A creepy ritual, some doomed teenagers, maybe a few jump scares. But as it unfolds, it becomes something far stranger. The film structure is deceptive. It begins with a cold open in the mountains of Bhutan, where a group of hikers stumble upon an ancient, grotesque skeleton. From the moment one of them touches it, their fates are sealed. This prologue feels disconnected from the rest of the story at first, but it sets the tone well. Something ancient and unknowable has been disturbed, and the ripples of that stretch far beyond this isolated incident. What follows seems to play out as a conventional horror setup. A group of teens summon a supernatural entity called the Empty Man by blowing into a bottle and focusing on it for 3 days. But the urban legend is just the surface. The story then shifts focus to a former detective investigating the teens' disappearances. And with this, it becomes clear that the Empty Man isn't the real story. It's the doorway to something much larger. Then we get to see the Pontifex Institute, a cult that feels like something straight from the pages of a Lovecraft story. Their doctrine revolves around the idea that reality is shaped by thought, that belief has the power to manifest physical forms. The Empty Man is actually a bridge between humanity and the source, an incomprehensible force that exists beyond space and time. This isn't just a cult worshipping some ancient god. Actually, they're not even worshipping the Empty Man itself. They're acknowledging something so vast and alien that it breaks the boundaries of human understanding. The cult's members aren't driven by faith, they're driven by a sense of awe and terror. They know they're nothing more than pawns, and they've accepted it. This is where the film really goes into cosmic horror. The Empty Man isn't the ultimate threat, it's merely a symptom of a greater, unknowable reality, like the great old ones in Lovecraft stories. The source isn't malevolent or kind, it simply is, and that indifference is what makes it so horrifying. The most chilling revelation comes late in the film. James La Sombra, the man we followed through the whole journey, isn't real. He's a tulpa, a thought form created by the cult to act as a vessel for the Empty Man. His memories, relationships, his entire life, all fabricated. He wasn't investigating the mystery of the Empty Man, he was the mystery. And I found this part very interesting, because they show us the equation through which he was created, and it goes thought plus concentration plus time equals flesh. In the end, the Empty Man leaves you with more questions than answers, of course. Like all great cosmic horror, it thrives on ambiguity. The terror doesn't come from what you can see or what you know, it comes from what you can't know. And that's what makes The Empty Man one of the most effective cosmic horror films in recent years. I watched Nope about 4 times in the span of 2 months when it first came out for some reason. And interestingly enough, I started out not liking it too much, but with each rewatch, I appreciated it more. While this movie doesn't fully dive into Lovecraftian aesthetics, at its heart, Nope is about the limits of human understanding. The movie centers on a mysterious, predatory entity, Gene Jacket, that begins as a classic UFO trope, but is revealed to be a living organism. Its motives are alien, its biology defies anything we know, and it challenges our assumption that we can categorize and control the world around us. In fact, one of the big things that happens in this movie is that Jupe, the rancher, attempts to tame the alien because he was seemingly able to tame an ape when he was a child, which made him think he had control over creatures, but not this one. From the start, the movie leans into the fear of the unknown. The characters are drawn to the skies, not knowing what they're looking at or why it's there. As the story unfolds, we learn more about the creature, but not enough to understand it fully. Where did it come from? Is it the only one of its kind? Why does it eat people through what looks like an old camera? And I have to mention the one scene that I loved from the very first watch, which is when the tourists are sucked into the creature and they are trapped there with absolutely nowhere to go for who knows how long. It reminds me of those cave diving videos, but this is even worse because they are in a living organism, and there is no chance of escape. The characters are dwarfed by Jean Jacket's scale and power, and even when they think they understand its mechanics, the thing transforms or unwraps into something completely new, and then it's a whole new set of rules. Its true form, revealed in the film's climax, doesn't resemble anything we understand, and its method of consumption, a digestive system that literally sucks its victims into an endless void, is horrifying. Even its reaction to eye contact feels like a rule from an entirely different reality, which may be where it came from. On the surface, The Mist might seem like a standard survival horror film, but it goes much deeper than that. What makes it truly unsettling isn't just the creatures stalking the fog, but the overwhelming sense of helplessness in the face of something vast, unknowable, and entirely out of our control. The Mist itself is a perfect representation of cosmic horror. It's not just a fog rolling in, it's a veil hiding an entirely different reality. The creatures that emerge aren't just dangerous, they're unnatural. Their biology defying anything we know. Similar to Nope. These aren't monsters in their traditional sense, they're invaders from another dimension, part of an ecosystem that doesn't belong here. And that's what makes them terrifying, because they don't hate us, they don't even care about us, we're just in their way. As with all great cosmic horror, The Mist isn't just about the external threat, but rather about the human response to it. Trapped in a supermarket with no escape, the survivors quickly descend into paranoia, fear, and fanaticism. Miss Carmody, the self-proclaimed prophet, becomes the embodiment of humanity's worst instincts, using fear to control, dividing, instead of uniting. In my opinion, a lot of great movies, especially in this genre, fall apart at the end, which sucks. However, this movie nails the ending. When the group is exploring the world, what they find is unrecognizable, and it really gave me the vibe of, this is no longer our world, the time of humans is over, and these things are here to stay. It's their set of rules now. Out of options and surrounded by the mist, the protagonist makes the unimaginable decision to end the suffering of his companions, including his own son. However, in quite the twist ending, the military arrives mere moments later, clearing the mist and restoring order. The group's suicide was futile. If only they had waited another 20 minutes. Very grim, but I love the ending. I think for me, I prefer endings to be dark, or at least ambiguous, as is the case in Carpenter's movies. The Mist is adapted from a Stephen King novel by the same name, and although I haven't read that novel, I did read some other stuff from King, one of the best horror novelists. So I read The Shining and Pet Sematary a few years ago, and to be honest, I was not the biggest fan. I felt like I was waiting for some insanely good and terrifying climax that I found to be underwhelming in both stories. A bit of a unique opinion, but that's just how it was for me. Maybe I overhyped him too much in my head. I am currently reading Salem's Lot, so maybe that will be better. On my last Cosmic Horror video, I saw a recommendation for his short story, The Jaunt, and I read it, and I liked it a lot. So The Jaunt takes a sci-fi concept, the idea of instantaneous teleportation, and turns it into something genuinely horrifying. This is cosmic horror disguised as speculative fiction, a reminder that some things are better left unexplored. The premise is simple. In the near future, teleportation, referenced to as the Jaunt, has become commonplace, revolutionizing travel and commerce. At first glance, it seems like a miracle. The Jaunt allows people and goods to be instantly transported from one point to another. But of course, there's a catch. While the body makes the trip unscathed, the mind experiences it very differently. It stretches out indefinitely for the conscious mind, creating an eternity of isolation and nothingness, and who knows what else. The story follows a father explaining the mechanics and history of the Jaunt to his children as they prepare to use it for the first time. It feels almost mundane, like a typical science fiction setup, until he reveals the dark truth. You must be unconscious to survive the Jaunt. If you're awake, the experience is so horrific that it drives people insane. The discovery of this fact comes from early experiments, where awake test subjects emerged either catatonic or completely deranged, babbling about the endless white eternity. In fact, one of the lines that I found the most interesting was, Karun touched the mouse. It was like touching something inert, packed straw or sawdust perhaps, except for the aspirating sides. The mouse did not look at Karun. It stared straight ahead. He had thrown in a squirming, very frisky and alive little animal. Here was something that seemed to be a living waxwork likeness of a mouse. There is something about a living thing being reduced to packed straw or sawdust and still resembling some form of consciousness that I found really effective and scary. The twist comes at the end. The father's young son, curious and rebellious, deliberately stays awake during the jaunt to see what it's like. When he emerges, he's alive, but just like the mouse, utterly unrecognizable. His hair is white, his face twisted, and he's screaming. He shrieks that he's been in there forever. It is also said that he looks old and young at the same time. The jaunt is a perfect example of how a simple concept, teleportation, can be twisted into something profoundly unsettling. It's not the technology itself that's terrifying, but what it reveals. The universe is vast, uncaring, and full of horrors we can barely comprehend. And in the face of that, even the smallest glimpse into the void is more than enough to break us. Thank you for watching.